Welcome back, guys, to another episode of Brother Love in the District. Tristan here, along with Jacob. And Jacob, you want to go ahead and tell them what we're going to get into?
Yes, when we're talking about this week's NFL matchups and the upcoming ones, going on into hockey, we're going to be talking a little bit about our teams and how both of our teams have kind of faltered these past few weeks. And then finally going into baseball, the end of the year awards have finally wrapped up, and there's a few things we need to talk about with the Phillies. So let's get right into it.
Yeah, so I think starting out, even though we lost, I think this is the thing I was looking forward most to talking about, and that's the Eagles' loss. Obviously, Washington won 32-21. I think everyone knew, if you even follow football remotely closely, then you knew the Eagles lost. They lose the undefeated record and fall to Washington 32-21. Honestly, just real quick, I don't think it's that big of a loss. I think it's actually more helpful than it is hurtful, if that makes sense. But Washington ran the ball right down Philadelphia's throat the entire game. They dominated time of possession. 40 minutes and 24 seconds in time of possession for Washington, which doubles the Eagles. So definitely ran all over them. Eagles missing Jordan Davis substantially with the past 2 weeks. You see Damian Pierce and Washington as a whole, not just Brian Robinson, but Antonio Gibson also run all over the Eagles, going right up the gut. They did a really good job of staying ahead of the sticks, keeping them third and short. I wish I could find the splits per half, because in the first half, I think Washington might have missed 2 first down attempts on third down. They were converting really well in the first half, and then in the second half they kind of faltered a little bit. But you got to say Washington just took advantage of the Eagles and their weaknesses in that game. So, they played well. That's really all I can say about that game before we get too deep into it.
Yeah, one of the only times I think I'll ever say this, Scott Turner actually had a very good game plan. I promise I'll never say that again. But yeah, I'm kind of surprised that he was able to stick with the run, and he did it throughout the entire game. Just a very big game in terms of our team psyche, in terms of the confidence of our offensive line, because they were able to go into Philly, dominate them in terms of the run. They did okay on the pass rush, a lot better than probably we thought. I thought that the Eagles were. We saw the last time they played, they were able to get a lot of sacks, and that just wasn't the case this game, which was big. Brian Robinson had a very big game. That one touchdown he got was very impressive, where he was
reached across the goal line, being held up by Fletcher Cox and the rest of the defensive line.
Using his leg strength. Gibson had a big game. Terry McLaurin was making Darius Slay look dumb in man coverage. He was eating him up in a lot of plays, and there was a few more plays he could have broken out into if he wasn't fouled. So very big game. Our defense, they played well in the terms of, they got a lot of turnovers, but it seems like they were allowing a lot of yards when Philly was getting going, but they did a great job of kind of killing their momentum in very timely fashion. They were able to get 3 or 4 turnovers, which coming into this game, Philadelphia only had 3, and I think that was one of the big reasons for your loss. One of the turnovers, which was the fumble on Dallas Goedert, it had one of the most blatant face masks I think we've ever seen, other than that one that was Philly against the Lions, where his helmet was the side of his helmet was at the front of his face. But this one, it was hand directly in where the eyes would be, and it was a fumble. But it was big, but I don't think it was as big as people make it out to be, because you guys did get the ball 3 times after that, so it's not like that was the last play. And then obviously we need to talk about Brandon Graham, because I'm not sure what he was.
I want to talk about that separately a little bit, because I think there are bits and pieces to both arguments, and I think that'll be a little section on its own. So I want to wait to talk about that.
Yeah,
but I wanted to tack on that Terry McLaurin, thus far this season, is the only receiver in the NFL, well, on the Eagles schedule to have over 100 receiving yards, and he's done it twice. I want to say he had 102 in the first game, and in this game he had 128 yards. So he's the only receiver to give the Eagles secondary trouble in this season so far. And I mean, trying to think, just thinking ahead of my in ahead of the schedule, the people that they have left to play is the Giants, who I don't really think have a receiver who could do it twice. The Cowboys, maybe CeeDee Lamb, maybe not. That's very iffy. Then they have the Packers. Christian Watson has been coming on a lot recently. 6 touchdowns in the past 2 weeks. Then they also have the Titans
You got
and
the Saints and the
the
Bears,
Saints
but
and the Bears. I mean,
all those teams
I don't see
are
a receiver who could really do that because I think Michael Thomas is
no,
out for the season, right?
yeah, and
Yeah,
plus he just runs slants. But most of the teams are running teams more than they are
yeah,
passing, so that's
which
not
is another
really
piece we'll move on to. But
it's not something
ultimately,
you need to worry about.
Washington played a. I will say this: Washington outplayed Philadelphia in the first half. In the second half, not so much. The second half, it was. I think in the first half, both teams looked decent. The Washington did a good job of keeping the Eagles' offense off the field, which is obviously what they needed to do because the Eagles' offense is one of the best in the league right now. So they kept the Eagles' offense off the field, which was huge for them, and they also overtook time of possession, like I said. But in the second half, I think everything got sloppy. The Eagles' defense started to step up a little bit more, and Washington couldn't really move the ball. And then the Eagles' offense obviously just had turnover central. And I think, like you said, those turnovers were game changing. That first interception that Derek Forrest picked off at the start of the second half led to a touchdown, and that put Washington up 17-14. Then actually, I think that was at the end of the first half, if I
That's in
recall
the
correctly.
first.
Yeah. Then after that, you had the Dallas Goddard fumble, which led to a field goal, which made it 26-21, making it a touchdown game. And then you had that Quez fumble on that 50-yard pass, and
Which was very big.
he has to hold on to. I mean, that didn't lead to any scores, but that was probably more of a backbreaker than the Dallas Goddard fumble. Now, yes, Dallas Goddard got face mask, but first off, you got to hold on to the ball there, whether you get face masked or not. Secondly, like you said, they had the ball multiple times after that, and on top of that, you can't go into a game depending on the refs to help you win. That's not how it works. So you have to go in and be ready for any type of random thing like that face mask call that got missed to be thrown at you. So they have to be ready for that. You have to hold on to the ball. Quez Watkins, that was more detrimental to the Eagles' loss than the Dallas Goddard fumble. He had a 50-yard pass. He was wide open, and Jalen Hurts gave him a good ball. And when he got up, I don't think he saw the guy from behind him. So when he
He
got up, he just
definitely
came in
didn't.
and punched the ball out, Peanut Tillmaned him, and that's one you also have to hold on to. If you're going to get back up, you have to make sure you have possession of that ball. So that was rough for them. The Eagles, I think, ultimately shot themselves in the foot. They had a couple penalties that really set the game up for failure. They had that punt that at the end of the game with the 2-minute warning where which I didn't even know this was a thing. I didn't know
I
that
didn't either. I did not know
I
that was a
didn't know that
rule.
you couldn't have offensive linemen past a certain point on a punt, which the punter did a good job. I can't really blame the offensive line. Obviously, everything is
Yeah.
timing based in the NFL for the most part. So the offensive line is thinking, maybe give them 3 seconds to get the ball set up and punt and then go, where he has to dive out of the way of one of your linebackers to make sure that he can actually get the punt off so it doesn't get blocked. That messes all the timing up and then moves the clock past the 2-minute warning, which changes the game because the Eagles then don't have that extra timeout. So I think that was also a big part of it, but obviously that face mask is a big call, but you can't depend on the refs there. So yes, it sucks that they missed that, but refs are humans too. So I mean, you can't base it off of that. But overall, I think it was a very sloppy game. And while yes, Washington ran the ball right down Philadelphia's throat, they didn't even have that great of a rushing game. They only ran for 3 point. Hang on, I have it written down here. 3 points. I think it was 3.1 yards per rush. That's not good. NFL, to be good in the NFL, you want to have about a 5 yard average per rush, and they were only averaging 3.1. But I'll tell you what, with 3 yards per carry, 3 yards per clip, with 4 downs, you're going to get a first down every time. So they didn't run the ball efficiently, but they did it well, which is all that matters. So Washington definitely won a battle of sloppier gameplay. Now, I think the Eagles' offense played well in the first half, and then the second half they kind of fell apart. I want to talk about that roughing the passer though, because that was also a huge part of the game. And I think I saw an interview earlier of Taylor Heineke on the Pat McAfee show, which, first off, I gotta say, that video of Taylor Heineke on the plane trying to imitate Kirk Cousins was blasphemy. He should not have done that. Like, Kirk Cousins came back from down 17 in the fourth quarter to beat the Bills. You had the lead, like, you're not him, okay? Calm down. You're not him. Secondly, the that I think that was kind of, yes, was it the right call? Yes. But was it really? It's hard because Brandon Graham obviously trying to get a big sack, and the fact that he just randomly took a knee and it's not something he was expecting, I don't really know if you can really blame Brandon Graham there. The
He
whistle
had
was a
like
little bit
he had
late.
two. Tristan, he had two
Oh yeah,
seconds
they
to
they
react though.
in that interview, Pat McAfee said they did the calculations. He was 6 feet from, or 6 yards from Taylor Heineke when he went down on a knee. But you know how if there's a false start or an offside when they blow the whistle at the beginning of the play, the quarterback when he takes the snap he always spikes it because coaches tell them to, because sometimes a defensive lineman doesn't hear a whistle, or in that case, the whistle was a little bit late. I mean, no one was expecting it was such a sporadic and not a normal knee. Sometimes you see him take a step back and wait, and then they take the knee, but he just kind of jumped on the ground. So, yes, again, was it the right call? And did Brandon Graham have time to react? Yes, but at the same time, Brandon Graham is thinking, I need this sack. The whistle was a bit late. I think there, yes, there's nothing Brandon Graham could have done. He could have stepped out of the way, but in the heat of the moment, in the rush of the game, when you're trying to get the ball back with a minute left to at least give your offense a chance, I don't think that really reaches his mind. Like, oh, hey, he took a knee. So Brandon Graham, yes, he made a mistake, but at the same time, I don't entirely blame him because it was an odd knee to take. He gave himself up. Taylor Heineke said, I was either going to Terry McLaurin or just falling to the ground. And it was such a sporadic knee. So, yes, it was the right call, but I think in the heat of the moment, there's nothing Brandon Graham really could have done. It was a stupid play all around. But, I mean, again, I don't think it really hurts the Eagles to lose this game. So I'll let you, if you want to put more on that flag, then you can go ahead. But I think that's my 2 cents on it. I don't think there's really much Brandon Graham could have done in the heat of the moment.
I kind of agree with you, but I mean, part of football is the unpredictability, and I think you kind of have to take that into account. I mean, he was Heineke was running around in the backfield, then he decided to take the knee. Then there was about 2 seconds before Brandon Graham hit him. You need to stop in that point. I mean, I understand it's a little unpredictable, but he had the time to
Yeah.
move out of the way. Just because you're going for a sack doesn't mean you can just all willy nilly hit a quarterback and say, "Oh,
And
I was going for a great play, so like you should be able to understand why I had this penalty."
if
I think that literally was that ended the game. That gave us a first down, and then we just were able to just sit on run the clock down.
Okay,
So I
but real quick, saying willy nilly hit a quarterback makes it seem like he went in there and clocked him while he was sitting on the ground.
no,
Brandon
but
Graham dropped
you
to his
still hit him.
knees trying to slow himself down because he knew that he might have killed Taylor Heineke if he hit him full speed. So he tried to slow down. He tried. Now,
He tried to,
yes,
but
and it
you
didn't
still hit
work.
him.
Like, he could have stepped out of the way. But again, I don't think he's thinking in his mind there's potential of him taking a knee. That's what I think is the biggest thing there. But like I said, it was the right call and it hurts, and everyone else was calling it a ridiculous play. I've seen videos on both sides, but you have to make that call there,
Yeah,
unfortunately.
and Brandon Graham's explanation. This is a direct quote. I was trying to touch him down because it looked like he was going to get up. The veteran defensive end said via official transcript. You just never know, but that's on me. I own that one. That's on me.
That's
Um,
another. I saw someone say like maybe he was trying to pull a Kenny Pickett where like you fake slide and then go, or like
yeah,
they
but
do the
he
fake
when
they
he
do the
touched the
fake
ground,
spike.
once you like
Yeah,
give
once you give
yourself up,
yourself up.
you can't just touch a knee down and then keep going. You can't do that. So I think obviously Brandon Graham took ownership of that, but I think you just can't blame one specific thing in this game. I think you guys kind of failed as a team. Our offensive line outperformed you in a certain areas. They
Yeah,
did
the
enough. We
offensive
were
line was pushing the defensive line. I don't know what
yeah,
your offensive line took before the game, but
I don't either,
we need
but
some of it.
yeah, but sorry. I just think we were a lot more clutch than you guys. You guys just made way too many mistakes
Yeah, and that's really the big
to
part of the
say
game.
that you guys should have won that game. So that's my 2 cents on
I
it.
think I think the Eagles offense, I think there were another two big pieces that kind of killed the Eagles offense. For one, they needed to run the ball. Miles Sanders was averaging 4.5 yards a clip on his rushes. He ran for 12 for 54. So he was having a good game. They needed to run the ball, and they didn't do it until the second half where they were already down to the point where it wouldn't really help them. And also, I think that the after AJ Brown got hurt at the beginning of the game when he took that step and kind of hurt his knee, that it hurt the offense a ton too because AJ Brown, I don't know how many people realize this, but AJ Brown opens up the offense for everyone else so much more because if you're worried about AJ Brown, then you have Devontae Smith open or Quez Watkins open or Dallas Goddard. Like having AJ Brown makes the offense so much more open. And once he took that injury, he wasn't the same. He only got 4 targets in the game, and so that kind of changes the game. And I mean, again, with that offense, you have to be able to go to other people, but the AJ Brown injury definitely hurt the offense in that game. I so like you said, it was a very sloppy game, especially for the Eagles. I don't think it was a good play, but at the end of the day, I feel like this is actually more helpful for the Eagles than it is hurtful because obviously they take their first loss and but the way they take it was so brutal and such a hurtful loss that I think it'll help them because Trey Thomas, this is a quote I got from a podcast he was in. Trey Thomas says that's the type of game where you don't want to go into the film room because you know that the coaches are going to torch you. So they're going to go in. They went in on Tuesday probably ashamed to watch the film. They don't want to see that. Coaches are going to tell you, you know, what's wrong. If they would have won that, 90% of the stuff that they did wrong in that game would fly under the radar and they wouldn't even talk about it. And then those are the same mistakes that they'd make in future games. So the fact that they lost this makes sure that they look at those really bad plays to help them advance forward. And then the fact that you lose to a underwhelming opponent in your own division, that just makes it that much hurtful. That's lemon juice in your wounds right there. So that's I think this is actually going to help the team more, and they're going to come out ready to play in this upcoming week. And so I think the Eagles have a new life to them. And also, I've heard multiple players say that they're happy that the 17-0 run is over. AJ Brown said he's super happy that it's over, and Jason Kelsey was like, yeah, obviously, you know, you want to go 17-0, but every team wants to do that. And once it's over, you don't have that stress on you anymore. So it's a big win. I said since the start of the season, for the most part, that once I started seeing them win a lot of games and, you know, dominate some teams, that I didn't want them to go undefeated. It is very rare that you see a team go undefeated and then win in the playoffs and go to the Super Bowl. I obviously the Patriots did it and they lost to the Giants, but it's you need that. You have no margin for error once you get to the playoffs. And so I'm happy they lost. They can come back down to earth, realize they're human. Like I said, it's the same thing with the 2017 Eagles. They lost that Seahawks game in week 13, and that brought them back down to earth after a 12-game winning streak. So definitely a huge loss there, and I think it helps them a ton.
Yeah, I think ultimately time will tell, but I understand the merit that's to this loss. but you can't just continuously say that. If there's another loss, you need to not want to lose.
And they got a big test coming up, which we'll see, especially the
They
way
have
that
a they have a few big tests coming up because you're going to
yeah.
have a lot of run offenses coming up, and they're obviously going to be looking to exploit what happened in the Washington game, and obviously going on to the next week's matchup with the Colts, we saw last week that Jonathan Taylor almost had 150 yards, so it looks like they're going back to the offense they were running last season in terms of like conceptual. They're going to be running the ball a lot, and they're obviously looking to dominate time possession and kind of get a win like Washington will. If you guys want to win, um, I'm not. I mean, I think the Colts are going to get a decent amount of rushing yards on you. I think that's almost inevitable, but you guys need to limit the turnovers. You need to take advantage of the drives you have and not just throw willy-nilly interceptions or have a dumb fumble.
I don't think that interception that he threw I don't think that interception that he threw was entirely his fault. He threw it into double
No,
coverage, but normally AJ Brown comes down with that. It was in
but
his
it's
hands, and Derek, when they
yeah,
fell to the
but
ground,
it's
Derek
still
Force
double
just kind of
coverage.
ended up with in his hands. So I mean, obviously, yes, that's going down on the stat sheet as a Jalen Hurts interception, but it was in AJ Brown's hands, and normally he does come down with that. So I don't entirely think that was bad. Obviously, it hurt the team because that led to a touchdown, or yeah, it led to a touchdown. So uh, yes, it hurt, but they do need to go back to controlling the turnover battle. They turned the ball over prior to that game 3 times the entire season, and they gave it up 4 times in that game alone. So definitely have to go back to the turnover battle. And then, like you said, they have a couple tests coming up. They got Jonathan Taylor, who was the best running back last season. Then they have Derrick Henry, Aaron Jones, and AJ Dillon, Saquon Barkley. They got a lot of tests coming up, and I think they wanted to address that because I think I'll go to it now. They come out and Howie Roseman signs Linval Joseph and Ndamukong Suh off the streets and bring them in to help stuff the run. I mean, Linval Joseph is that Jordan Davis type player where he's a big boy and he's going to fill the gap. He plays nose tackle. He's going to be right in the middle of the line, a run stuffer. And then Ndamukong Suh, another guy who's decent with the run and I think also will help with the pass rush. So they bring in 2D tackles because they're down. The Eagles got hit with the injury bug hard recently. Jordan Davis is on IR already. I think he has 2 more games that he can miss, or that he has to miss, maybe one, but he should be back relatively soon. And then Goddard, Maddox, and Tui Pelotu all just went on IR. So they've had multiple people go to IR, Goddard and Maddox being 2 really big ones. And then also Smith and AJ Brown, Devontae Smith and AJ Brown, both on the injury report this week. I think they're going to be okay and they're going to play. AJ Brown came out and said he feels fine, but they've got hit with the injuries hard all at one time, and that's something that's kind of scary for the future. Uh, but I think other than that, we'll go. Do you have anything else on that game?
No,
Then I think we'll move on to these next week's matchups. Philadelphia going to visit the new Jeff Saturday Colts. Uh, and like you said, Jonathan Taylor. They need to stop the run. Uh, I think they should win this game. They could win this game. But they have Darius Leonard, who now goes as Shaquille Leonard. He's out for the season with a neck surgery. And they also, Kwity Paye, one of their pass rushers, first round pick last season, he could potentially be out. Did you realize that the Colts defense is actually kind of filthy? I didn't
yeah,
I didn't realize how good their defense is. They have on the D line they have DeForest Buckner, Yannick Ngakoue, and Kwity Paye, and then at linebacker they have Shaquille Leonard, and then in the secondary they got Rodney McLeod, who's probably going to be their box safety in this game, Stephon Gilmore, Kenny Moore. Like they have a really good defense. Their secondary actually gives up the least amount of production to wide receivers in the NFL, but they give up a lot to the tight ends, especially with Shaq Leonard out. So that's going to be huge for them. And I think the key to the game is obviously they need to limit the run, which I don't know how much that's going to happen, but They obviously need to limit the run, but ultimately, I think the key to winning this game for the Eagles is they have to get out on top quick. They need to make it so that Matt Ryan has to pass the ball and they have to move to a pass offense. Because if you keep them in the game and let Jonathan Taylor run the ball, that's going to be rough for you. So if they come out quick, come out hot, and start passing the ball, get some points on the board, I think they can win this game.
My key for this game is just limit turnovers because if you do that, then it's a very winnable game.
Uh, I still think though I think the Eagles are going to win.
I do
The
too.
Colts haven't been good. Like I said, they could be missing Quiddy Pay. They don't have their star linebacker, so I think they should be able to win this game. Washington visiting Houston. Looks like you guys are actually getting a semi easy schedule for the next couple of weeks. You have Houston and then
Yeah,
Atlanta. What's your
yeah.
outlook on
So,
Houston?
they're a decent running team, but outside of that, I don't really think they have a lot. This is a game we should win because both teams were able to run, but we have a pass game or a very diverse pass game, and they don't. And with Chase Young is going to be back this week, that's going to add another to our defensive line, which is already very good. So I think that is just going to prove too much for the Titans, and ultimately, this is a game that we definitely should win. My key to victory for this, hmm,
I think it's your pass offense. Oh, wait, real quick before we move on, before we talk about that, I think a giant elephant in the room that needs to be addressed is the fact that they're starting Taylor Heineke over Carson Wentz. Because
yeah, and
Carson Wentz is healthy, isn't he?
yeah, but
Yeah,
that's not a shock to me considering they're
I don't
winning.
think it is either, but I mean,
Yeah,
still, it still needs to be addressed. I mean,
the team's already rallied around him. It would be dumb to just put Carson Wentz in there now. Like if Heineke were to lay a few eggs, then okay, then you put Carson Wentz in and see how he does. But at this moment in time, coming off of some big wins, you can't really just plug Carson Wentz back in there. But
I I I think it ultimately comes down to the fact that the team as a whole likes Heineke more than they like Carson Wentz. I
well, because
think that's what
he's
it
been
is.
there longer, they've already like gone through it with him. That they just play better with him. But in order for us to win, I think we need to take the passing like what is the word opportunities as they come. Because like we're both of our teams are going to be able to run, but we should really try and get out in front of the Texans to start the game off. Try and get them to try and play a very high explosive offense, which is something they don't have. Don't play into their hand.
It's going to be big, though, for your D line to stop Damian Harris. That's probably,
Yeah,
honestly, that might be the biggest thing because Damian Harris, excuse me, uh, Damian Pierce, wrong team. Damian Pierce is a really good running back. Rookie guy, came out of Florida. He is playing insanely well this season. He he. This was when they played the Eagles, but he accounted for over 80% of the Houston offense up to that game. What he's probably done just as much, if not more, since then, but he accounts for essentially all of the Houston offense. So if you guys want to win, you need to stop Damian Pierce. It's the
mm-hmm.
only way you win. And then obviously you need the wide receivers to come up big, but their secondary isn't god awful. Derek Stingley's pretty good. They also got Steven Nelson, who not great, not terrible, your average corner. Houston has a decent team, but one you should win, and one that
Yeah,
I think you guys will win. I think that's it that I have for the NFL. Is there anything else that you wanted to add?
that's all I got for the NFL.
Moving on to the NHL, I'll just start. I think there's not much to go on for the Flyers. They are on a 5 game losing streak. They're just like I said, it's the lack of star power finally coming into play. They've now shifted from which they've done this multiple years in a row. It's so weird. I don't know how it works where they don't have the process to win, but they win games. And then when they do finally get under the process of winning games, they can't win games. They're on a 5 game losing streak, but they're out shooting their opponents, outplaying their opponents, out efforting their opponents. But it's the fact that they don't have the star power. Obviously, Couturier and Atkinson, a huge loss to the team. JVR, another guy who's supposed to be scoring goals for them, he's a loss. And just to add insult to injury, Travis Konechny went down with an injury yesterday against the Bruins, who's the team's leading scorer, has been on a hot streak up to this point in the season. So he's he's hurt for a little bit. Yet to see how much it hurts them. But I think the biggest thing is John. So they're losing hard fought games, and John Tortorella came out after their losses, and he said, "Look, this was after their 5-1 loss to Dallas. Said, look, yes, obviously losing sucks, but I'm not entirely mad at the losses." He goes, if they weren't giving effort and they lost, then I'd be mad. But he goes, they're giving their best effort. You see it out on the ice that they're trying to win the games and they just can't. I mean, they held the Bruins to scoreless hockey for about 35 minutes of the game yesterday, which the Bruins
That's
are
pretty
by
good
yeah, the
for this
Bruins are
season.
by far the best team in the NHL right now. They are just clicking on all cylinders. They're top 5 in PK and the power play. 5-on-5 scoring, they're just lights out right now. And yeah, they held the Bruins to scoreless hockey for 35 minutes. So they're playing hard fought games. It's just they start to lose it. They don't have the star power that other teams do. So
Yeah.
they need to focus on depth scoring, which if you look at their roster, there are 20 plus players who all have a goal. So they need to get that depth scoring. But overall, I mean, you're starting to see the lack of talent show, and with all these injuries coming in, it's only going to get worse. They're really getting hit hard with the injury bug, and I mean, every team deals with it, but sometimes it just gets to the point where you can't move around it. You can't maneuver around it, and I think it's starting to get to that point for the Flyers.
Yeah, and I just think you're seeing the. It's not like they're tanking on purpose, which I think you kind of see in today's sports in general, but it's just you're trying, but you don't have the talent or the star power to do it. Your players are too young right now, and you just have too many injuries.
Before we move on to the Caps real quick, just on the note of tanking, I know we don't talk about basketball much, but did you see the thing where they might add? I forget what they called it, what the official term of it is, but basically, say if you go, I'm going to use this in hockey terms because it made a lot more sense for me in hockey terms than it did in basketball because I don't watch basketball. But so say you have 32 teams in the NHL, and this is a way to prevent teams from tanking to the point where if you are the last team in the NHL, you get booted down to the AHL. And then the team who wins the AHL gets moved to the NHL. So say like the Montreal Canadiens have the worst record in the NHL. Instead of, well, obviously they'd still get to draft, but they'd get moved down to the NHL or AHL, and then say the Phantoms win the AHL. They get moved up to the NHL. That they want to do that for the NBA. They do it in soccer, but I
Yeah,
don't.
that's like relegation for soccer,
That's the
which I
word. Thank
watch,
you.
but
Relegation. That's what it
that
is.
just wouldn't work with the NBA because you're not going to be calling up these G League teams because
That's what they want to do. That's the
they're
idea.
farm systems though, and that just wouldn't work. It's different for soccer. It's completely different. It works there, but it's not going to work in the NBA. That's not going to clear. They're going to try and do it, but that's not going to happen.
Which I mean, I don't really like that idea. It doesn't make sense to me, but
No, it works for soccer, not for NBA.
yeah, because like you said, it's farm systems. And then if you start taking, like, just for example, if you start taking those teams that are farm systems and putting them up in the pros, I mean, you might be hurting the rookies and the people who are just trying to better their game more than you're helping them, if you think about it. So I mean,
Yeah,
I just
and
thought I just thought that was interesting. My One of my
you're
buddies told me about it, but go ahead.
you're just gonna mess up the markets, and if that's true, if what you just told me is true, then I don't think that's a very good idea.
I don't think it is either, but I just thought that was an interesting thing. One of my buddies told me about it, so I wanted to hit on that. But Yeah, I just thought that was interesting. Now, if you wanted to, we can go on and talk about the Capitals.
I don't really want to, but I guess we have
Are they still
to.
flying at just kind of hovering around 500?
Yep. I'll pull up the
I was gonna
standings.
say I haven't looked at the standings
We
in
are
a
7-9-3. We have 17 points. We're tied with the Flyers, the Penguins, and in terms of points, but yeah, we're just not that great of a team. We played a very good game against the Lightning 5-1, played great. Kemper played great, but then we lost 6-3 to them, lost 5-2 to the Panthers. We actually lost the game in the shootout to the Blues last night, where it was 4-2. We came back and we got salvaged a point, but this team is just nothing right now. I mean, it's unimpressive. Again, tired of Kuznetsov and Mantha, the only guys who you can really point to and say are still playing great. Is still, I think the goalies, they're doing as best, like the best as they can considering the defense. Ovi and Dylan Strom, but outside of that, the injuries are killing us, and I just think our age is really catching up to us. So, I mean, I I think Laviolette, if this continues, I think he could be out by midpoint of the season, but who knows?
I do have to say one advantage that the Flyers have that the Caps don't have at this point is, for one, the Flyers are young, and two, the Flyers have their coach of the future right now. Like
Yeah,
this is just a season. I mean that you're already to the point where it's kind of affecting the team. This was just a season to see who's going to stay on the team, and you're seeing who's going to be there for the future. Which, and the way I'm seeing it, I'm seeing the players that I want to be on the team stay on the team that I thought would be decent at the beginning of the season. Owen Tippett's playing really well. Travis Konechny's playing really well. Travis Konechny has 19 points through 17 games, so he's over a point per game player right now. Kevin Hayes, another point per game player, 17 points in 17 games. So you're seeing the players that should be up there get up there, and then also, like you said, the goaltending for both teams are just the big piece because Carter Hart's playing out of his mind right now. He has a 2.55 goals against average, not terrible, but save percentage 925 right now. And he just needs some scoring in front of him. The Flyers struggled to score more than 3 goals, which was a problem they had last year. They struggle to get over 3 goals per game, so they need to figure that out. They have Montreal next tomorrow, Saturday. I think this will be coming out Friday night, late Friday night. So, but they have Montreal coming up. They don't have killers on their schedule for the future. They got Montreal, Calgary, who's been struggling, and then next Wednesday they meet Washington. So
mm-hmm.
for the first time this season, so it's gonna be interesting to see what happens in the upcoming week. They definitely have some time to maybe try to get some practice time in because Lord knows they need it. Real quick before we move on to the MLB and get ready to close this out, I did want to mention Bomberger to you guys. Bomberger is a local food truck out of Loudoun County. Two guys our age, college age students, just trying to live out something that they've wanted to do for a while. They hover around this Loudoun area, Leesburg, Lovettsville, Purcellville, all around there. If you guys want to check them out on their Facebook or Instagram at Bomberger Food Truck, where they post all their events and all that stuff, and they also cater. So if you guys need catering for something, go ahead and check them out. Really good burgers, really good stuff. Definitely something I would look into. Going on to the MLB to close this out for the most part, the end of the year awards. I think obviously Aaron Judge wins AL MVP. No surprise there. Sets an AL record for home runs in a single season. I don't think there's really much else that needs to be said except for he was absolutely insane this season. You know what I didn't realize? I didn't realize that he was already in his age 30 season. I thought he was
Yeah,
young.
he's
He got
older.
drafted late. So he's that's definitely a way to get your career or your contract season is have a career year on your contract season. So, but he wins AL MVP, AL Cy Young. Another one that I don't think was really surprising, Justin
No.
Verlander, just really enriching Hall of Fame inductee ballot for him. Second Cy Young, one of.
It's actually his third.
Oh, it's his third? Maybe that's the thing I saw. I saw a stat that it was like, I guess it was three Cy Young club, but I thought it said two. Three Cy Young clubs. So he finally wins his World Series game, gets another Cy Young. I think he is a walk in Hall of Famer at this point. First
Yeah.
ballot. Uh,
I'm surprised they gave it to Sandy Alcantara. I thought they were going to give it to
I
Arias.
was just about to say I didn't see who won the NL MVP.
Is Sandy Alcantara. I thought they were going to give it to Arias because he's a Dodger and all that, but Alcantara won it, so credit to him.
And I mean, he had a heck of a season.
Yeah,
He played really well. He was definitely one of the single bright spots on the Braves. Excuse me, I was just looking at a Brave screen on the Marlins team. Is so. I mean, he played a great season. I think he deserves it. They were talking since the beginning of the season that he was a potential Cy Young candidate. So he definitely pitched really well this season.
yeah. The Rookie of the Years weren't a surprise. Two amazing outfielders who had two great seasons. Julio Rodriguez and Michael Harris II. Not really surprised there.
And Michael Harris is a homegrown guy. He grew up in
Yeah,
Atlanta, grew up going to Braves games. So I think that's I think that's really cool too. I mean, the fact that he gets called up to his hometown team and then wins Rookie of the Year with his hometown team, that's really cool. And then Julio Rodriguez, he's got a heck of a bat over in Seattle. So that's something that they can look forward to there. And the NL MVP was Paul Goldschmidt, who I got to be honest, I'm semi surprised with that. Just I
I'm not.
he played really well, but it was more the fact that he kind of fell off at the end of the season. And that I think that kind of played a role for me cuz I mean, you saw last season. I think there is a little bit of recency bias in the Cy Young, in the MVP, all that stuff. I think there is a bit of recency bias. Bryce Harper didn't have the strongest season at the beginning of the season last year, and then in the second half is when he really caught on and took over the MVP voting and ended up winning. So I felt like Manny Machado had a better shot because Manny Machado was lights out in towards the end of the season. But
But his stats were nowhere. They weren't as good as Goldschmidt's, though.
and I agree, Goldschmidt played really well. I know he was. I know towards the end of the season he kind of fell off from potentially having the triple crown, but he still played really well. And it was just the fact that I thought with the recency bias, I thought there was a bigger chance that Manny Machado would have been able to win. But either way, yes, I'm surprised that Goldschmidt won, but at the same time, I'm not. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Uh, a couple other things. Bryce Harper getting surgery on his elbow that
Elbow?
restricted him from playing in the outfield. Now, this is huge. Bryce Harper, obviously great right fielder, has a cannon for an arm, and he went out earlier in the season with the I want to say UCL tear is what it was in the
Yeah,
elbow.
UCL.
Uh, and so he wasn't able to play right field, and I think that was detrimental to not only the Phillies defense but also, I mean, come the playoffs it didn't look like they were missing anything, as I think Nick Castellanos made a diving catch in every single series, but they I think Bryce Harper is way better out in right field. I feel like with Bryce Harper in right field, it makes it easier for Castellanos. I think they can move Castellanos to DH, and then with him not worrying about defense, I feel like that might help his offensive production. That might just be wishful thinking, but last season they said they were going to rotate the three of them, Schwarber, Harper, and Castellanos, around in the outfield and let them kind of go back and forth. But I think if they focus on letting Castellanos be DH and focus on his hitting, then that might help the team more because Castellanos did not play that well this season. Only 13 home runs on the season, didn't hit any in the postseason, which is what they signed him for. So he definitely needs to come on next season. And if he does, Phillies could be a lot more dangerous of a team. So big news there with Harper to get surgery. Hopefully that goes well. And the last thing to talk about, Phillies leading in the off-season talks about getting your boy from the Dodgers now, Trey Turner. And you want to talk about right pre-recording, we talked a little bit about it, and you led and just said, "I'm not happy that that might be happening." Are you just mad
Well,
that that'll sure up the Phillies infield?
yeah, and I would prefer him to go to the Giants or the Orioles because I obviously don't want to see another
See him that
Matt
much, yeah.
on the Phillies of all teams. But yeah, it's I think you're definitely a top runner. Um, I think you're up there with the Orioles and the Giants. I think those are the top three teams he's going to be looking to get because I think he's going to go there, be big, and possibly take them to the next level. Which not a great thought for the Phillies. I still think you guys need to address the pitching as well.
Yes, definitely.
But yeah, it definitely should be interesting to see how this offseason works out because obviously the Phillies are going to be looking to add that one more piece or two that they think will be able to take them to a World Series or to a World Series win in this case.
Yeah. Uh I mean, it's weird to me because I really like Gene Segura. I'm surprised they let him walk. I thought he played really well and definitely was a big piece in that World Series run. But the Trey Turner obviously such a big player, such a game changer. And I think reuniting him and Harper would be really cool. And I'm not even gonna
I wouldn't.
I, I'm not even gonna pretend like I have a grasp on MLB contracts because I mean, not that NFL contracts are easy to understand either, but MLB contracts are about 10 times harder to understand than NFL contracts. And I'm just starting to get a hold of NFL contracts a little bit. So I'm not even going to pretend like I understand it, but he turned down his qualifying offer with the Dodgers, which leaves him open to free agency. And now whoever signs him in free agency also has to give up a draft pick if they sign him. I don't know exactly how it works, but I don't really think. I'm interested to see the money they give him, really. I mean, like you said, pitching, obviously, a huge piece that they need. And Philadelphia is a big market, so they could work with it and work around the money. I feel like they could do that easily, but he definitely is going to require a big contract, and that's going to hurt the pitching ultimately come the season. So definitely interesting to see what happens in the offseason. Nothing has been made yet, but looking at all the leading sources like ESPN, MLB, it does look like the Phillies are leading in that regard to get Trey Turner, which obviously will be a huge piece to the team.
Yeah.
Not only his offensive ability, but his defensive ability too. But I think with that, that really closes out the MLB for the most part, and not going to be really much more to talk about for a while. So with that, as long as you have nothing else to
So I
add
got
on, then we are going to end it off there for this week. We have we post the signings and stuff like that, big news like that, big trades, all that stuff on Instagram and TikTok over on this side of the screen. Then other side, Jacob. uh, and then like two big signings. I just posted a video on that on TikTok and those two signings on Instagram. So if you guys want to go check those out right there on that side. Also, the email, blndc@gmail.com. If you guys want to send us an email with questions, comments, something to put on here. You guys can rate and review us on Apple and Spotify. Really helps us out there. And we also do these NFL predictions weekly on YouTube. So you can go check that out, Brotherly Love in the District. And with that, I believe that's all we got. So we're going to close it out for this week.
see you later.